Elena Marsh had dreamed of this day since she was a little girl. The small stone chapel on the edge of Silverpine territory was filled with flowers, candlelight, and the soft hum of voices from the people who had come to watch her marry Damien Cole, the boy she had loved since she was 12 years old. She stood in the small room behind the chapel, staring at her reflection in an old mirror. Her dress was simple but beautiful, white lace with a long train that touched the floor. Her hands trembled slightly as her aunt fixed the last few pins in her hair. "You look like a dream," her aunt whispered, smiling through tears. "Damien is a lucky man." Elena smiled back, though something in her chest felt uneasy. She could not explain it. For weeks now, a strange, quiet feeling had followed her, like a shadow she could not shake. She told herself it was nerves. Every bride felt this way before her wedding, didn't she? Outside, the guests were seated. Pack members from Silverpine filled the pews, along with distant relatives and childhood friends. Near the back, half hidden by the shadows of the doorway, stood a man no one recognized. He wore a dark coat, and his hood was pulled low over his face. No one had invited him, yet no one dared to ask him to leave. There was something about his presence that made people lower their voices without knowing why. The music began. Elena walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her heart pounding with a mixture of joy and that same unexplainable unease. She kept her eyes on Damien, who stood waiting at the altar in his black suit, his golden hair catching the candlelight. He was smiling, but his smile looked tight, forced, as if he were holding something back. When she reached him, he took her hands. His fingers were cold. "You look beautiful," he said, but his voice lacked warmth. The officiant began the ceremony, speaking of love and loyalty and the bond between mates. Elena barely heard the words. She was too busy watching Damien's eyes, which kept darting toward the chapel doors, as though he were expecting someone. Then, just as the officiant asked if anyone had reason why this marriage should not take place, the heavy wooden doors of the chapel burst open. A woman stood there, breathless, her hand resting on a stomach that was clearly swollen with child. Gasps rippled through the pews. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "Damien," the woman said, her voice shaking, "please, don't do this." Damien's face went pale. He turned to look at the woman, and in that single glance, Elena understood everything. The uneasy feeling she had carried for weeks suddenly made sense. This was not nerves. This was her body, warning her of a truth her heart had refused to see. "Who is she?" Elena whispered, though she already knew the answer. Damien did not answer right away. He looked at Elena, and for a moment, something like guilt flickered across his face. But it did not last. Instead, his eyes softened as they moved back to the woman in the doorway, and Elena watched, frozen, as recognition and longing replaced any guilt he might have felt for her. "She's my true mate," Damien said quietly. "I didn't know it would happen like this. I'm sorry, Elena." The words landed like stones in the silent chapel. Elena felt every eye in the room turn toward her, waiting to see how she would break. She felt her cheeks burn with humiliation, her throat tighten until she could barely breathe. The man she had loved for over a decade, the man she had trusted with her whole heart, was choosing another woman in front of everyone who had ever known her. She did not cry. She would not give him that. Instead, she lifted the edge of her gown, turned, and walked back down the aisle, her steps steady, even as her world crumbled beneath her. Whispers followed her like a wave, but she did not look back. She pushed through the chapel doors and stumbled out into the cool evening air, gasping as though she had been underwater. She did not know where she meant to go. She only knew she needed to be away from those staring eyes, away from the ruins of the life she had planned. Her wedding dress dragged through the dirt path behind the chapel as she walked blindly forward, tears finally slipping down her cheeks, despite her effort to hold them back. She did not see the man step out from the shadows until she walked straight into him. "Careful," a deep voice said, steadying her by the shoulders. Elena looked up, startled, into the face of the stranger who had stood at the back of the chapel. Up close, she could see he was tall, with sharp features, and eyes the color of a stormy sky. There was something commanding about him, something that made her feel both safe and unsettled at once. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her face quickly. "I wasn't watching where I was going." You have nothing to apologize for, he said gently. Not after what happened in there. Elena stiffened. You saw. I did. His jaw tightened, as though the memory angered him. He is a fool. Despite everything, a small, broken laugh escaped her. That doesn't help much right now. The stranger studied her for a long moment, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. It was not pity, the way everyone else in the chapel had looked at her. It was something warmer, something that felt like recognition, as though he had been waiting a very long time to stand in front of her. My name is Cade, he said. Cade Ashbourne. Elena blinked. She had heard that name before, whispered in stories among the pack elders. The Alpha King of the Northern Wolves, ruler of the largest and most powerful territory in the region, a man so rarely seen in public that some believed he was more myth than man. You're the Alpha King, she said slowly. Why would you come to my wedding? Cade was quiet for a moment, as though weighing how much to say. Because I needed to see you, just once, even if it meant standing in the back where no one would notice me. I don't understand. He took a slow breath, his gray eyes steady on hers. Elena, the moment I caught your scent months ago, at a gathering you probably don't even remember, I knew. You are my fated mate. The words hit her like a wave of cold water. She took a step back, shaking her head. That's not possible. I would have felt it too. You would have, Cade agreed. If I had let the bond form completely, I stopped it before it could take hold in you. Why would you do that? Her voice cracked with confusion and lingering hurt from the chapel. Cade's expression grew heavy, his shoulders tightening, as though carrying an old weight. Because of what I am, enemies of my throne have hunted for any weakness they could use against me for years. If word spread that I had found my mate, you would have become a target before you even understood what was happening. I could not protect you, and keep you hidden, and let you build a wedding at the same time. So I stayed away. I let you live the life you were building, even though every part of me wanted to come to you. Elena stared at him, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to dismiss his words as impossible, a strange stranger's attempt to comfort her after a humiliating night. But another part of her, the part that had felt that unexplainable unease for weeks, recognized truth when she heard it. So why are you telling me now? She asked quietly. Because tonight, fate made the decision for both of us, Cade said. You do not belong to Damien anymore, and I could not stand in the shadows and watch you walk away, without at least giving you the truth. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the cool night air against her bare shoulders. Her carefully built future had collapsed in less than an hour, and now a stranger, a king from a territory she had never visited, was telling her that an unseen bond had connected them all along. I don't know what to believe anymore, she admitted. You don't have to believe anything tonight, Cade said gently. I'm not asking you to come with me, or to accept a bond you never chose. I only wanted you to know the truth, so that whatever you decide next, you decide it with open eyes. His words surprised her. She had expected him to press his advantage, to use her heartbreak and confusion to pull her toward him. Instead, he stood there, quiet and steady, offering her nothing but honesty. Behind them, the chapel doors opened again, and voices spilled out into the night. Elena flinched, imagining the pitying looks that would follow her home, the whispers that would follow her for months. She could not bear the thought of walking back into that crowd, of facing her family's sympathy and her friends' awkward silence. I can't go back in there, she whispered. Cade held out his hand, not touching her, simply offering. Then don't, come with me. Only for tonight. Only until you have somewhere quiet to think. No promises, no expectations. I will take you back to your family the moment you ask. Elena looked at his outstretched hand, then back at the chapel, where laughter had turned to concerned murmurs about her disappearance. She thought of Damien's cold eyes, of the woman standing in the doorway with a hand on her stomach, of the years she had spent building a future that had crumbled in a single moment. Slowly, she placed her hand in Cade's. The moment their palms touched, warmth spread through her, gentle and steady, like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. It was nothing like the coldness she had felt from Damien at the altar. This was something real, something that settled deep in her chest and told her, without words, that she was safe. Cade led her to a car waiting at the edge of the property, away from the eyes of the gathered crowd. As they drove through the night, away from Silver Pine and toward the northern border, Elena watched the lights of her old life fade into the darkness behind them. "Tell me about your territory," she said softly, needing to fill the silence with something other than her own racing thoughts. Cade glanced at her, something like relief passing over his features, as though her simple question was a sign she was not running from him in fear. He spoke of the northern forests, the mountains that bordered his lands, the pack members who had served his family for generations. His voice was calm and steady, and for the first time that night, Elena felt her racing heart begin to slow. They arrived at a large stone house on the edge of a quiet forest, far from the grand castle she had imagined a king might live in. It was warm and inviting, with soft lights glowing in the windows. "This is my personal home," Cade explained as they walked inside. "Not the main hall. I thought you might want somewhere quiet tonight." Elena looked around at the simple, comfortable furnishings, so different from what she had expected. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," Cade said simply. That night, Elena sat by a fire in a guest room, still wearing the remains of her wedding dress, and allowed herself to finally process everything that had happened. She cried, not for Damien, she realized, but for the version of herself who had believed in a future that was never truly real. She grieved the loss of a dream, even as something new and unexpected began to take its place. In the days that followed, Cade kept his promise. He made no demands, pressed no claims. He simply gave her time, space, and honesty, answering every question she asked about the mate bond, about his kingdom, about the dangers he had tried to protect her from. Slowly, Elena began to see the man beneath the legend, a king who carried heavy burdens, but who had chosen, again and again, to put her safety and her choice above his own desires. Weeks passed before Elena felt ready to make a decision. She thought of Damien only occasionally now, and when she did, she felt no anger, only a quiet gratitude that fate had shown her the truth before she had spent her life bound to someone who did not truly want her. She thought instead of Cade's steady voice, his patient honesty, the warmth that had spread through her the moment their hands first touched. One evening, as autumn leaves drifted past the windows of the stone house, Elena found Cade standing on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "I'm ready," she said quietly, stepping up beside him. Cade turned to her, his gray eyes searching hers. "Ready for what?" "To stop hiding from what fate already knew," she said. "I choose you, Cade. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because for the first time in a long time, someone chose me honestly, without secrets, without shame." A slow smile spread across Cade's face, the first true smile she had seen from him since that night outside the chapel. He reached for her hand, and this time, the warmth between them was no longer a mystery, but a promise. Word spread quickly through the northern territories that their reclusive king had finally claimed a mate, a woman who had once been left at the altar, now standing beside him not as someone broken, but as someone chosen completely and without hesitation. Elena Marsh, who had once believed her happiest day would be a wedding that ended in humiliation, discovered instead that her true story was only beginning, written not in the shadow of another woman's choice, but in the light of a bond that had been waiting patiently for her all along.